You can see the mountain that she was talking about is actually this is the second highest peak in the world. So the first one is Everest, the second one is K2. So that's not really our topic and our subject, but you can see that you can realize the sickness that a person really gets when you climb a mountain this high. So temperature on the mountains, as she mentions, and we're going to continue with the slides, mountains are colder at their peaks because as the warm air rises, it expands and cools down. So mountains have shiny white surfaces because of the ice and the snow. It reflects the sun, keeping the temperature freezing during the summer. As she was talking about it, being in these high altitudes is really dangerous. And three other features of mountains is temperatures and ice and glaciers. So temperature on a mountains are colder at their peaks because of the warm air rises and it expands and it cools down. So we usually see a very low temperature on the top of the mountains, and it's because there are less air there. So less air, less warmth it has. So, and the pressure, basically the air pressure really drops down. So basically the snow that lands on these mountains stays if not all year, but most of the year. Okay. So mountains have shiny white surfaces because of the ice and the snow. It reflects the sun, keeping the temperature freezing during the summer. So basically, a part of this, the low temperature is not just the fact that there's snow there, that just these mountains are made of rocks and they reflect the sunlight. So the reflecting the sunlight really doesn't allow the ground to sort of absorb the heat. So it keeps the snow, and it keeps the low temperature, freezing temperature. So ice on the mountains. Many mountains have sharp peaks, ridges and valleys. These are formed by forest ice and glaciers. In the summer, the rain gets trapped in the cracks. During the winter, it freezes, causing the rocks to split from the mountain, leaving sharp, jagged edges. So, as you might have studied in science, and if you haven't studied it in science, I'm going to quickly recap it. Remember when water is in liquid state, um, if you put it in a water bottle and fill it up with water and you put it in a freezer, and once it's completely freeze, that water bottle expands. So this is what we know of water. When it changes state from liquid to solid, it expands. So this is what happens when the water inside the cracks in the mountains get exposed to very cool temperatures, so it freezes, so it basically expands. So when it becomes winter, summer again, and spring again, these ice basically melt, so leaving these cracks in the rocks. So this how throughout the time, the cracks in these edges and on mountains really form. Another feature is glaciers, and mind you, all of these features are important, but glaciers is the most important, and cold and altitude sickness, avalanche, these are four very important features in the mountains. Okay, so glaciers are made from ice and snow that has never been melted. As it moves down the mountain, it takes rocks with it and erodes away the mountain. Glaciers can leave large U-shaped valleys carved out of the rocks. So glaciers is basically what actually ruins the mountain. Now, if you would take a look at your book in page 25, when it says weathering. So basically, weathering is so even if you read the book, it says even as mountains are being formed, they are also being worn away by weathering. It happens with ice, water, changes in temperature, and basically whatever. Well, so far what we have talked about. So yeah, all these changes in temperature, the temperature drops down in winter and rises up in the summer, causes these ice to freeze, to melt, and basically this causes the wearing away of the mountains. Okay, so it's very important for the exam. I want you to study well, especially that weathering part in glaciers. All right, so moving on. This is basically not very important for the exam, but it's important if you for your imagination. So basically, the Earth, if we would split it like a cake, we would have an inner core inside, and then an outer core, and then a mantle, and then a crust. So we basically live on the crust. In order for us to understand how the Earth is like formed, how these mountains are formed, we need to understand what's inside the mountain, okay? So we're going to talk about these one by one, all right? So basically, this is the map of the world. It's basically the yellow part is all the continents, and the white part is Antarctica. And we have Australia here, Africa. So basically, all of these red lines are plates or tectonic plates. So the movement of these plates really cause the mountains forming. Many million years ago, this is how we believe that the mountains were formed. So the reason why we bordered them is that this tectonic plate, this whole bunch, really moved together. That's what we know of. And we know that this basically part is where we live, right? This area right here. So this part really moves together. It might be perhaps because under there's a crack in the tectonic plates. It really helps it to, move all together. You see this part where it's like this is where Everest is supposed to be. This is the Himalayas, right? So this is where the Andes are. So all of these are tectonic plates, all right? So the Earth's crust isn't one solid layer. So it's broken up into huge areas called tectonic plates that float on top of the mantle, okay? The maps show where the tectonic plates are, all right? So we have three movements basically, rubbing together towards each other and away from each other. So these tectonic plates really, they have these three movements, and any basically mountain forms are formed with these movements, okay? So when they're rubbing together, one of them goes up, the other one just like drifts to the ground, okay? So when the two lands are towards each other, they're basically colliding, okay? So you can imagine that when two are, towards each other, one of them goes on top, the other one goes under it, right? So moving away from each other would actually create a crack. So it would create like a valley. This is what creates valleys, right? So this is basically an illustration of how the tectonic plates, form mountains. All right. Well, it says what happens when magma escapes through gaps in Earth's surface. So this is for you to answer. So volcanoes are one way mountains were formed. So we want you to think about how these mountains that we're going to study were formed, and these three are the most important three mountains that we're going to have. Okay, so the first one is Fold Mountain, the second was Fold Block Mountain, third one is volcanic mountains. So I want you to remember the definition of these mountains. They're very important. Okay, so fold mountains occur when the mountain tectonic plates collide. So the edges of the plates crumble as they are pushed together. Okay, so the two parts of the tectonic plates, they come close to each other, but they try to collide. Okay, one of them pushes up, Alright, this is the creates the mountain fold. So the rock of the Earth's surface is pushed up to create the mountain. Alps are, fold mountains that we have, and this is how it's formed. It's very, very important. Okay, fold block mountains are very important as well. It's one of the main topics we have. So when cracks in the Earth's surface open up, large chunks of rock can be pushed up while others are pushed down. This is the movement where the two parts rubbing against each other. So one of them goes down, the other one goes up. Okay, the Nevada mountains in California are fold block mountains, and it's also very important. I want you to make a flashcard out of it, as I suggested in the assignment. Okay, so volcanic mountains, we all know that inside the Earth is the outer and the inner core is basically lava, and all this basically molted and melted materials and substances, right? So volcanic mountains are formed around volcanoes. So volcanic mountains are made of layers, ash and cold lava. So basically there's a crack in the mountain, there's a crack in the land, and two of them move away from each other. This happens in the land where it's closest to the lava under the earth. So when this happens, basically the lava comes out. So a very famous one is in Mount Vesuvius. It's I'm not pretty sure about the pronunciation. It sounds Italian. It's in Italy. Okay, so the definition of these mountains are very, very important. All right, so a recap of what we have studied so far. First of all, how our mountains are formed. Okay, so what are mountains? What are mountain ranges? And I want you to take a note of these as I say them. Okay, so mountains, mountain ranges. Of course, the highest peak in the world is Mount Everest, and 6 features that we have on the mountains, one of them being avalanches, then the cold temperature, glaciers, and basically sickness altitude, and so yeah, less air on the mountains. These features are very important, and the 3 main mountains that are formed due to the movement of the tectonic plates. I hope you have a wonderful time whenever you where you are when you play this video and movie. Thank you for watching. This is Ms. Besta, and I'll see you guys in the next lesson.